com in there. It'll be there when you get done with your tour. More than welcome to take all the photos you like. We just ask that you silence the phones and that you stay with the group. I promise I will get you to the room y'all came here to see, but I need you to stay with me. Please do not wander off. Do not lean on any of the woodwork. Some of that woodwork is going to be original. We'd like to keep it that way. And then lastly, one thing I like to do on my tours is provide you all the opportunity to vote, just like the individuals did in that room. But that means I need 13 volunteers. So if you are interested in volunteering, as we go up the ramp, I'm going to have little cards. Go ahead and grab one of those cards from me. You're not reading any more than 1 to 2 words. Are we ready to go inside? Yeah? All right, let me meet you right around here. Go ahead and...
Fill in the whole space. You can go all the way up to the front. Go all the way up.
It was not finished until 1753, with the bell tower, which is where we came through to get to this room. Like I said, some of the woodwork in here is original. About 65% of it is going to be original to construction. The brickwork that you saw outside, about 80% of that will be original. So if we dive into the history, go back in time, bypass the Declaration of Independence and the beginning of the American Revolution, we're going to land at the 1750s and 60s. Going on in the world at that time is going to be the 7 Years' War. Part of that war took place here in the United States, or what was then the 13 colonies, so we know it as the French and Indian War. Now that World War did end in an English victory, but just like with any war, there's going to be a heavy financial cost. There's going to be debt that's accumulated. One way that they're going to try and repay all that debt is through taxes. Y'all are familiar with no taxation without representation. But folks, there are 27 grievances listed in the Declaration of Independence. Of those 27 grievances, how many of those talk directly about taxes? Throw out some numbers. 5, 10. 10. You said 1? You are correct. Only 1 talked directly about taxes. There were other things going on here in the 13 colonies, and in particular up in Massachusetts and Boston. The Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party. That's all going to lead to the Intolerable Acts, or what we call the Enforced Acts. Folks, another reason we start a courtroom is one, to make you squirm while you're waiting to get in there. But also, under the Enforced Acts, individuals out of Boston and Massachusetts lost their rights to their courtrooms. If you were accused of a crime, you either had to travel back to London or up to Canada for your trial. Do you think that your witness that would have stood in that box is going to be able to travel across the water and represent you and be there for you? Nor is your family who would have stood where you all are standing right now. Do you think your trial by jury of your peers, do you think you're going to know faces that are in those jury boxes? How is that fair? How is that innocent until proven guilty? Realizing that all this was happening under Massachusetts, the other colonies thought, well, if it's happening there, what's to keep it from happening in our colony? So in 1774, members of the First Continental Congress are going to be here in Philadelphia. They did not meet in this building. They met actually a block down at Carpenter's Hall. And they're going to send an initial list of grievances, or what we call the Olive Branch Petition. And they promised each other that if things did not get better within a year, they'd meet right back here in Philadelphia again. Well, things get better, then they get worse. Got worse, right? The king declared them to be in a state of rebellion. That's when all 13 colonies were represented in that room across the hall in the Second Continental Congress. Before we continue the story, though, I want to tell you about one of those 2 items that's original to the building. It's going to be that painting up there. That is the Pennsylvania State Seal. It's placed up there in 1785. But prior to 12 o'clock noon on July 8th of 1776, this stood in its place. Now, I know I had some people from England, so you can't answer this question. Folks, what do you think this is? Before you answer, no, it is not Gryffindor. What do you think? The King's Arms? Yes, yep. I've heard it. Yeah, yep, you were on the right track. This is the British coat of arms. Seal of the King. I said prior to 12 into this building, into this room, they took down this coat of arms and they would burn it. That spot on the wall behind me was bare again until after the Revolution, when the Pennsylvania State Seal was put in its place. Does anybody have any questions before we make our way to the other room? When you're ready, go ahead, turn around, make your way to the assembly room. We'll continue the story there. Welcome to the assembly room. Again, this is where colonial Pennsylvania state government would have taken place. But as of May 1775, this is where the Second Continental Congress is going to meet. Again, all 13 colonies are represented. That being said, nobody thought to create a seating chart, so we don't know exactly where everybody would have sat. But based on the primary sources we do have, we believe they would have sat by colony. So if we go down the East Coast, New Hampshire is here. That back one over there is going to be Georgia, which is going to put Mr. Franklin in Pennsylvania right here. Their next door neighbor being Virginia. Now, folks, I want to stress something to you. The individuals in this room, Franklin, Adams, Jefferson, Hancock, we first hear about them in our history books, right? And they're kind of way up here. They're our nation's heroes, right? Everything they did, all the sacrifices they made. But in their own time, they were individuals just like you and I. They started off as students. When they grow up, they'll become teachers, lawyers, farmers, and business owners. They were individuals just like you and I, who had to decide or make some of the biggest decisions for what's going to become our nation. So over the course of a year, they're going to have to decide how far are we willing to go. Their relationship with Great Britain was done for. There was nothing that could be done. War was in full swing. There was no coming back from that. So again, over the course of the year, they're going to have to debate and decide how far we're willing to go. It's all going to come down to a vote on July 2nd of 1776. My 13 volunteers, this is where you come in. I'm going to say the name of each colony. When I get to the colony you have, you're going to respond with one of three things. Aye, nay, or not yet. Are we ready? Thank you. New Hampshire.
Aye.
Rhode Island.
Aye.
Massachusetts.
Aye.
Connecticut.
Aye.
New Jersey.
Aye.
New York.
Not yet.
What are you doing, New York? Come on. Get with the program. Pennsylvania.
Aye.
Delaware.
Aye.
Maryland.
Aye.
Virginia.
Aye.
North Carolina.
Aye.
South Carolina. Folks, the individuals in this room had to be in constant communication with the colony themselves. They hadn't decided how New York was going to vote, so you had to say not yet or abstain. A week later, you will say aye. All 13 colonies are going to vote in favor of declaring independence. So we have our vote. We should probably write it down. So Jefferson is going to present after that vote his Declaration of Independence. The second, third, and fourth are dedicated to making changes to that document. Once those edits are approved, they're sent to the printing office of John Dunlap. It's where we get the Dunlap broadside, what I like to call a breaking news copy. Folks, we do not have Facebook, texting, email, anything like that. The quickest way to spread word was by printing it. You'll notice that there's only 2 names on it, there's no signatures. The Declaration of Independence that was handwritten to the National Archives, that wasn't done until August 2nd of 1776, a whole month later. And the document wasn't made public until the year after that. You had 56 individuals who just committed treason. The war was not going well for the colonies. They did not want to provide this. So the only 2 individuals who were kind of out of luck were John Hancock, who presided over the Second Continental Congress, Charles Thompson, the secretary. So we've had our vote. We have our document. We are officially on our own. We need our own form of government. It's where we're going to get the Articles of Confederation. That was our first Constitution. It's going to get us through the rest of the American Revolution and into the late 1780s. But we're going to start to see some issues with it. Under the Articles of Confederation, our federal government was very weak. We essentially had 13 separate states. How many of you like to travel internationally? When you do so, do you sometimes have to switch your currency? Yep. Imagine switching currency every state you go through to get your state. There were 13 different forms of currency. There were disputes over land boundaries, who controlled what waterways for trade. There were starting to be rebellions. Realizing they had such an issue on their hands, 12 out of the 13 now states are going to meet right back in this room the summer of 1787. I said 12 out of 13. Is there anybody here from Rhode Island? Folks, we are still waiting on Rhode Island. Rhode Island is a smaller state, smaller population. Their thought was if we send representatives, we're going to lose our equal standing with the larger states like Pennsylvania, Carolinas, Massachusetts. So they're not going to send representatives. Now, the smaller states that did come for the convention, they had that same worry. And over the 4 months that they're meeting here, it's going to kind of create 2 sides of the convention. The larger states versus the smaller states. On some things it was northern versus southern states, but mainly larger versus smaller. So over the course of 4 months, they're going to argue, debate, and compromise to create what we know as our Constitution. One of the best examples of a compromise I can share with you is our legislative branch. We have a bicameral legislature meeting with 2 parts. We have a House of Representatives and a Senate. House of Representatives, the number of representatives per state is based on population to appease the larger states. But in the Senate, how many senators do we have per state? 2. That has not changed. That was to appease smaller states. Folks, September rolls around, and the individuals in this room were not necessarily thrilled with the document that they had. Even Franklin's going to say, yeah, this is not what I pictured. But they were running out of time. More blood was being shed. So of 1787, they're going to vote in favor of sending the document out for ratification. In order for the Constitution and this new form of government to go into effect, 9 out of the 13 states would have to ratify. And a lot of them would, with the stipulation that they could make changes to that document later. We have 27 changes to our United States Constitution. What do we call those? Amendments. Folks, the preamble of our Constitution is we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. Not perfect, more perfect. The individuals in this room knew we were never going to be perfect, so they weren't going to try to be. What they left us instead is a living, breathing document, one that we've had for over, 230 plus years, that is able to change and grow with us just as our needs change for this country. I told you about the one item that's original over there. The one in this room is the chair behind you, that big one right there. Now, the individual who sat in that chair, called the President's chair, was none other than George Washington. He sat in that very chair for the Constitutional Convention. Not yet President of the United States, but he sat up there for 4.5 months. It goes by another name. If you look where Washington's head would be, the design on the back of the chair is a sun. We call it the Rising Sun Chair. Gets its name from an individual who lives 2 blocks down here in Philadelphia, oldest delegate to the Constitutional Convention, invented the bifocals. Any thoughts? Benjamin Franklin. Now, at the time of the Constitutional Convention, Franklin's health was starting to fail him. 2 to 3 years after, he would die. So he's not going to do a lot of speaking, but he's going to do a lot of listening, a lot of observing. One thing he cannot take his eyes off of is the sun on the back of the President's chair. After they voted in favor of sending the Constitution out for ratification, he decides to speak. And he says, I wasn't sure if the sun on the back of the President's chair was a rising or a setting sun. But I'm pleased to say as of now it is indeed a rising sun. Folks, individuals just like you and I had to decide how far they were willing to go. It starts with the founding generation, but it does not end with them. Frederick Douglass, Susan B. Anthony, Martin Luther King, you folks standing here today. Those individuals have to decide how far am I willing to go. Another individual who did it was President Lincoln. In 1861, he's going to make a speech here at Independence Hall, and he's essentially going to say, I'd rather die than see the Union fall apart. What happens 4 years later? As his funeral train makes its way back to Illinois, it stops here in Philadelphia. He was laid in state right where I'm standing. Thousands came to pay their respects. So many that they had to take the windows out and create steps. Folks would come in through these windows, pay their respects to Lincoln, see the Liberty Bell at the head of his casket, and exit quietly out the other side. He decided how far he was willing to go. So as we leave here today, I want you to ask yourselves, how far am I willing to go to make sure that the sun on the back of the President's chair stays a rising sun, and that the sun does not set on the United States? What we're going to do is we're going to quietly walk out the doors to the left, out the way we came in. My 13 volunteers, thank you. I couldn't have done this without you. You'll hand those pieces of paper back to me at the back door. I will be at the back door. If you guys have any questions, feel free to come up and chat with me. I'd like to thank you all for visiting Independence Hall and for using your national parks.